Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Asian Pickles podcast. My name is Hua. I'm a licensed clinical therapist here based in the Bay Area.
And I'm Shosho, and I'm an author of Crication, my memoir, and a sex and relationship coach in Oakland.
I'm Brandon Chin, and I'm a trauma-informed personal trainer and strength and conditioning coach in Oakland as well.
And today, the pickle that we're going to talk about is the Asian body is political.
And what's that even mean?
Well, okay, political means to me, well, I'll just say that I was not political for most of my life. And then that changed when I had kids. And I think when you have kids, you are producing other bodies, and I got to keep these bodies safe from being taken, from being used, from being trafficked. And that's how I started to see bodies as political.
So I'm curious, do you think being political is a choice?
No, I think that all bodies are political actually, but particularly brown and black bodies are political, and female bodies are political. Like if you have a brown or black body in America, you're political because your body provides labor and everyone wants a piece of that labor, and mostly for free.
I think that if you have a body, you're already participating in politics, whether you know it or not. That's just kind of. I do think that I realized that I had a certain amount of privilege protecting me, because if I could tell I was a
As a
kid.
man, as a man,
As a man, as an Asian American too, I thought I didn't have to be political until I realized everything was political. And it wasn't like one moment, but I was like, oh, this is about resources and people are resources. And so that kind of brought the question that we were talking about, what resource am I being used for? And that was a hard one to ask myself because I was like, what, we'll go into that, but yeah, that's the important question. It's like, what am I being used for politically?
yeah, what are we all being used for?
Being fetishized for.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like women's bodies are used for labor, used for reproductive labor, and for emotional labor because our bodies create nations. Starting with families, those families become nations at some point. And men's bodies are used for back-breaking labor, especially if they're brown or black bodies. But if they're Asian American male bodies, they're often used for intellectual labor.
What about white bodies?
White bodies are the ones who are using other bodies for labor.
Exploitation.
Yep.
And running the government and determining who gets what.
Yep. They're the ones who are masterminding. The resources, they are the puppet masters, and we are on strings. That was really hard to see when I had kids, and I was like, oh my god, I just gave them more bodies to use.
Yeah. I think when I started to understand when I went into fitness, I didn't understand it was a political thing either. I was just like, I'm helping people exercise. All bodies are welcome. It's everyone being healthy. I can help anybody. And it's totally political. And there's a hierarchy to who has access to getting care for their bodies. Is rich white people are the people who get to take 2 hours out of the day to take care of their bodies. Everyone else is grinding away using their bodies, and they have maybe at most 30 minutes a day to like eat, maybe like take a break, scroll their phone, whatever it happens to be. And that's where bodies are political, really. To me, I started to see who I'm serving really mattered.
It makes me think of like the commodification of self-care.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because it's like
And wellness,
who
yeah.
is really taking care of themselves? Like privilege, people who doesn't have to work as much and doesn't have to commute as far.
Yep.
But if you have to commute 2 or 3 hours a day, every 5 days a week, there's no way that you can even go to the gym for 30 minutes.
And our bodies are commodified under capitalism. So just by having a body, you are participating in the system of capitalism and white supremacy. And if you're a woman, in patriarchy. So even without knowing it, here we are. All of us, all of our bodies, political.
It is really heartbreaking to hear that women's body are being used as vessel for reproduction. And it's sad that, the idea is not even like the quality of life of the child. It's whether or not we can be a vessel for the fetus and the child.
The super fucked up and dark thing that I'm going to say about this is that the female body being used as for reproductive labor justifies the nuclear family life. It also justifies the current pronatalist culture where you want women to be producing as many babies as possible, like especially white babies. And also it justifies rape culture. And rape culture to me is the very bullseye in between the Venn diagram of patriarchy and white supremacy and capitalism. And we see that in the way that the earth is being raped and exploited for its resources. Women's bodies are being exploited for children. Yeah.
Well, we can't leave the men's out of this. How are Asian men body is being politicized?
Yeah, well, having taken that journey myself, I've got my eyelids ripped open a couple of times. I'd say in the current political climate, it's intellectual labor that Asian-bodied men are hardworking, they're earnest, they're industrious, and they're willing to let people copy their math homework. They're the engineers, people who do really complex things, but they don't. No one's asking them to be any leadership positions.
They don't get to take credits for their effort either.
Correct.
But in the way that Asian men are providing intellectual labor, I see, especially with my Asian male clients, a lot of dissociation.
Dissociation, for people watching, is an important skill when things are too intense. I think anybody who's experienced something intense and they can't handle it or don't want to, we dissociate. But when it becomes a regular part of life, and then we can't actually know what's going on with our bodies. Like, we can't know if we're scared, if we're tired or hungry. We're just a brain on sticks.
On chopsticks.
Oh, we talked about dissociation a lot.
Yeah.
Do you want to give an example of how you dissociate?
Yeah, what do you see in fitness? Because you're working directly with bodies. How does dissociation look there? Because it looks different in a therapy context.
It shows up as nervous behavior, where somebody doesn't feel like, like if they're in a class, they're like, oh, well, I guess I'll just copy everybody else, instead of tuning into what their body's yeses and nos are, or maybe they're just going to follow. It's the easiest way to dissociate, is to just follow what everybody else is doing. Normally that would be a good thing in a safe group where you know everybody, but I'm talking about like a fitness class where there's like 30 different people and the instructor doesn't know your last name. They don't know anything about your body, and they're just like, go. And then people, they dissociate because they want to do the thing, but they don't want to feel any discomfort about their own body's boundaries. Like, I don't want to do this, but they'll just do it anyway.
Like in a fitness context, I would also think it's like if you ask an Asian American man to find a part, maybe find a muscle in what might not be easy for them to, or if you're going to ask them something like on a scale of 0 to 10 about pain or I don't know, interest or pressure, it would be hard to figure that out because there isn't much of an actual relationship with the actual physiological parts of the body.
Yeah, that's about right.
I've seen a lot of commercial for like pre-workout, which is, to help increase stamina, and to go longer like during a workout. So I'm curious on your thought on how is that aiding the dissociation?
Oh, it pushed it over the edge really fast.
Like it increases the person like threshold and tolerance, pain tolerance?
It's like when you take drugs like caffeine, pre-workout is mostly just caffeine, and it just gets people's adrenaline and their their adrenaline basically jacked up and their cortisol, so that they can just push through something really hard. They can basically sacrifice their body.
Boundaries, not having boundaries.
Right, overriding their, if say like you wanted to only experience a 6 out of 10 discomfort on an intensity scale, but you're told that 10 out of 10 is the way to make fitness progress. Well, I'm going to take a drug because obviously my own boundary isn't good enough. I'm going to need to push past it. So people actually do that a lot in their work lives too. They're like, oh God, I'm just feeling a little tired. Guess I'll just crank a Phil's coffee, which is like hyper caffeinated, like 4 times the normal amount of caffeine, but people, they build tolerances to it. So they just get this, they gain the skill of dissociating and never actually touching in and being like how many people like you hear like, I'm just kind of tired. It's because they're overriding their boundaries.
I guess dissociation is a defense mechanism, right? It's a survival mechanism. Like, even as a child, like if you face something that is very like stressful or very trauma like heavy, then you form your own way of checking out to not be so immersed in the experience as a way of surviving the experience.
And I'll just share a quick anecdote about myself. I was so good at dissociating, but I found a sport that absolutely rewards dissociating, which is Olympic weightlifting.
Oh.
You have to sacrifice your body to do something extremely difficult, and you can't be present for that. You just kind of have to be like, hope for the best. And so I injured myself, or I'd burn out or push myself. And I didn't learn that about myself until I got injured. Or like, what I was just like, I feel like absolute crap. But it also, like when I had to, the injuries taught me to attune to my body. I had to really learn how to actually check in, like, what the hell am I actually up for? What can I actually do? And that was sort of helpful in healing, is actually listening, what can I actually handle right now?
Yeah, that's cool that in order to stop dissociating, you used injury and pain as a guide to start listening and attuning to yourself, right? And that's how dissociation evolves into reassociation.
I mean, I wasn't like that forward thinking. I was like, fuck, I'm injured. I'm in a hard place and I have no other option but to listen. And that's, any kind of rehabilitation process is really learning what our bodies or mind's boundaries are at any given moment.
So do you recommend that Asian American men just go and get injured and then start?
No, because it's actually the segue to access to healthcare, right? What happened after we're injured, like how easy it is to see a doctor and get the right care that we need in order to recover, effectively, efficiently.
You mean it's not easy to?
It's not easy
to
at
do
all.
that.
It's been
Especially
harder now.
if you have a brown or black body.
And yeah, right. And physical therapy, most people think, is the thing that is supposed to get them back on the horse. It's not. It is designed to cycle people through an insurance process. They don't teach them the skills to actually rehabilitate. They're just like, are you good enough to type? You're off to the races. Are you good enough to walk? Whatever the
To
demand,
keep working again.
right? Whatever the demand of their occupation, the bare minimum. Not am I healthy and fully functioning, but can you do the damn job?
But that's where you come in. You actually help people heal and reassociate.
I do. That's,
Get out of injury cycles.
yes, and it is the skill of, it's just giving people the practice of attunement and asking their body's yeses and nos, like, oh, I'm not so scary. Don't do that.
What are you doing that you think physical therapy is missing, is lacking?
Spending time with people, absolutely, and also helping them understand that their tolerance for discomfort grows the more they touch close to that limit but not surpass it.
So it's like learning boundaries, learning the physical boundaries of the body.
Yes, and that helps if all of us could learn that, but especially Asian American men, because dissociation is going to come up as the natural response to doing something uncomfortable. We have to become aware of that, and just like even educating people on like, what is your natural tendency when something uncomfortable happens?
So like I want to say something about how Asian American men become disassociated in the first place. And that is that I think from the very beginning, like with my experience with, my father, my uncles, my brother, my cousins, my friends, they were never actually allowed to have bodies. Like the families of origin, their Asian families of origin, didn't really want them to have bodies, so that they would be obedient. And then when you walk outside the door, the white American culture around you also doesn't want you to have bodies. So you,
What,
so you
what
can
does
be
that
obedient.
look like? Can you give an example? To not have a body, to not allowed to have a body.
Yeah,
Like-
what's that mean?
You can't have emotions.
Oh, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to feel things.
You're not
but-
allowed to feel things, right? Because if you start feeling things, then you're not as easy to control. And of course, like the sons in the family need to be controlled.
Do you know what they do instead of feeling? The most common thing?
Play video games?
Intellectualizing.
Intellectualizing.
Rationalizing their
yes,
way out of
absolutely.
feeling their
Absolutely.
emotion.
And that we come full circle into Asian American men doing intellectual labor.
Thinking their way out of their own emotion. Whatever pain
Totally.
it is.
That is, I'm so glad that is a double bind, because the thing that is hurting you is also what you're going to be rewarded for.
Yep.
So that is probably,
That's a pickle.
that's the pickle. Oh, man. So if you're listening and you have an Asian American man in your life and you're trying to explain like how this difficult situation could be remedied, are they intellectualizing or are they not emoting? And also too, like, are they being rewarded for something? Like, what are they being rewarded for? That is,
They are being rewarded for living in their heads because their bodies don't feel safe. No one's ever taught them how to live in a body, how to read a body, and how to read their own signals. So it's the perfect recipe for like this robotic, intellectual labor career path of being like techies and engineers and accountants and doing the number crunching that this culture wants, putting you firmly in the middle management category
But have no soft skills.
and no soft
Have
skills.
no social skills.
Totally. Yeah. That's the brains on chopsticks.
yeah, that's definitely, I had a hard realization that I didn't have these soft skills when I was like 29, 30. And that's what set me on my journey to just understanding. The first thing I learned actually was attunement, like self-attunement. Like,
How did you arrive there?
the breakup was I went through a breakup and it was just so bad and disastrous and like catastrophic but it was the first time I ever pointed the finger back at myself. And I was like, because I'd been through like several relationships at that point there were some themes, and I was like, but I would blame the other woman because I'm straight. I would blame the woman or the girl I was dating, and I was like, wait, but where do I fit into this? And it's because I never actually attuned to myself or to them. So of course they just registered that I don't care about them because I couldn't share emotions with them. And I'd heard that I was a robot before, but I was like, I don't know what that means. Of course a robot's going to be like, I don't know what that means.
But you learn what you learn, right? You know what you learn. That means that you weren't exposed to it from at a young age. Like your parents didn't teach you how to attune to yourself and be accountable.
My mom taught me to favor my intellectualism early on. And so my anger also got bypassed too. Because anger is a good yes or no. It's very clear, right? Like, fuck no. Or like a fuck yes. But I lived in a bunch of maybes, kind of like, I could. That's not a good answer to anything.
So anger is a good indicator of boundaries, right? Maybes are like when your boundaries are a little bit porous and you don't really know if it's being pushed or is this beyond your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So you're talking about like your dating life, and that's like where I come in for helping people as a sex and relationship coach. And what I see here is that dissociation from the body for Asian American men is a disassociation from yourself. That is the nervous system, your emotional intelligence, your body intelligence, your intuition, and your soul, right? These things which, you know, we can think of as soft skills, but they're the attunement, and attunement just means like knowing what your yeses and nos are inside. When you can pay attention to that, you have a chance, because you have a chance at great dating, because all of these things, the body intelligence, the emotional intelligence, and your soul and intuition, these are all prerequisites for having an erotic life and a sexiness.
And who wouldn't want that?
Exactly. Like the depth, deep relationships, satisfying connections with your family, with the people you're attracted to, like good decision making. You need that. You need to know how you feel in order to make accurate decisions for yourself, and to have a spiritual life, and to have a solid sense of self. So this is what Asian American men are missing when they have a disassociated and primarily intellectual life.
And like it could be dissociation through practice, or there can be like little traumas through just throughout their life that cause them to continue dissociating. So one thing that I am involved in is in trauma-informed weightlifting. And so that is a philosophy and also a methodology right now that I wish I had when I was first getting into fitness, because that's what I was actually trying to do. I thought I was trying to get a six-pack to solve my relationship problems. I knew it was related.
Ooh, the obsession with the body,
right? Like
equals attractions.
Right,
Yeah.
that's gonna, but it was really like I needed to find my way back to my body's yeses and nos, to have some relationship with myself. We can call that master dating, like you have to date yourself, and then you can date somebody else, because it won't work. I've tried the dating someone else first. Anyway.
You tried dating someone with a six-pack and it didn't work.
Well, and also, yeah, like that, it truly doesn't actually matter that much. It made me more guy friends than anything. But that's also, it just comes back to, that's the foundation. And I say strength training because it's a direct confrontation to the nervous system. It's a system that makes you ask a hard yes or no question, like, can I lift this or not?
It forces boundaries.
It forces
or
boundaries.
You're going to get hurt.
Exactly. So you can use the pressure of physical injury, or you can make progress through just enough dosage.
You also brought up the idea that in order to be attractive, you have to have a certain body. Like, you know, for a man, for
Oh yeah.
a male, you have to have a six-pack. You have to be like 5'6", I don't know.
6'5" and fine with blue eyes, yeah.
And it's just like reminding me of like this online debate of like bear versus a man. Like if a woman
my
is
God.
in the woods, like, you know, who would
Yes.
they pick? And it's like it's so obvious, right? Because men is like, oh, you know, like they with their body they can actually push off a bear and protect the women and so on. But that's not the case. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Well, I think that no human man could take a bear. I think that's just sheer arrogance.
No matter how many packs you have.
No matter you get an 8-10 pack. But also there is this kind of red herring that tells men, if you focus on perfecting your body, you won't have to worry about any soft skills in relationships. That the body will do most of it. And, you know, even if that were somewhat true, that means you wouldn't have a personality. You would just be kind of like a...
Right. So like, you know, like Asian American men are the least chosen of all the races according to dating app stats. And like all non-white men are victims of sexual racism, but Asian American men are at the bottom. And that is so unfortunate.
Why is that? Why do you think they land so low on the pole?
I think it's because they are disembodied. And that if they could get in their bodies and start having their full emotional range and find their sexiness, which only comes through being in your body and being embodied and being in your feelings, then you, as Asian American men, will have access to greater dating pools than just Asian women, because that's how sexual racism works, right? Like you get a very small pool, but Asian women get every pool, every ethnicity and race of man out there. So it's really unfortunate, because I think that Asian American men are amazing. They're wonderful, and I only realized that late in life after I'd married a white man and had never really dated Asian before. So like I believe that they're great because they're great problem solvers, and they have amazing insight and soul and are natural nurturers, but they just have this missing element of their bodies. But if you can add that to the huge emotional range and the generosity of spirit and like an ancient civilization attached to them, Asian American men can be unstoppable.
So like what I'm hearing is that for Asian American men to have a good sex and relationship life, they have to see that their body is political.
Yes.
And to depoliticize their body.
To not let it just be used unconsciously.
Exactly.
To become conscious, because it won't happen immediately, right? That you're just like, oh shoot, I'm being used. Well, okay. What's next?
The reclaiming of it for yourselves as men and redefining it for yourselves as Asian American men, and not letting the white gaze define you.
I want to say before we go into the resources, and helpful resources, that how long you stayed in pain or torture or like a very difficult past is not how long it will take to heal.
Oh yes, so it's super fast.
But that's sort of a scary thing to think. If I've been this way for my whole life, or I've been in this situation, how long will it take? And I definitely remember having that fear of like, when is this going to be end? Like, what is it going to change? And it's not nearly as much length of time. Once you become embodied, there's a lot of kind of spiral-like learning where all these things start making sense together. So
yeah, should we give
so don't rush the process.
Don't rush the process. So yeah, resources to kind of ease yourself into, like, let's talk about that.
Yeah, so we have one thing to ask, one thing to read, and one thing to watch. To ask yourself, what is your body being used for?
I love that.
And then, book, of course. You want to talk about your book?
My book is Crycation, and it is a memoir where there's a huge component that's a body journey, and that is the reclaiming of my own body. So this is going to be a woman's body at midlife. But as Asians, I believe that all of our journeys are to reconnect and reclaim our bodies. It's not out yet. The book is not out yet. It's forthcoming.
And Brandon, do you want to talk about the show?
Yeah, something I recommend watching is the show on HBO Max called Warrior, which is the brainchild of Bruce Lee, and it talks a lot about the political experience. It's fictitious, but about Asian American and Chinese immigrants in the Gold Rush San Francisco era, and the violence and the racism portrayed pretty clearly, explicitly, and it's just a great way to just begin engaging this content. Maybe it'll incite a little rage and also kind of like a little satisfaction from.
And my recommendation for that is just follow your emotion as you watch the show, because
yes,
the point of the antidote to dissociation is being in the body as all these feelings, all these reactions are coming up. And watching show is a really great way, or reading books is a great way to reconnect yourself with your emotion and what these experiences are bringing up for you.
Yeah, that show is particularly good to I think understand a certain kind of Asian masculinity that doesn't easily get portrayed in Western media. And since this is an Asian American production, I think it captures that really well.
All right. Well, thank you for tuning in. Like I said, DM us or email us if you have any comments or feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Any last comments?
That's it.
What a pickle.
Bye.
Have a great one.
See ya.